All right, Beverly Watts is with us. She's the Tennessee Human Rights Commission Executive Director. Good to have you on. Boy, she knows her stuff, and I think it's wonderful that... Does every state have a human rights coalition or commission, to your knowledge?
I believe 47 of the 50 states have it, including Puerto Rico and Guam. They're pretty small in those because they're territories, but yes.
Okay.
Because there's one in the District of Columbia as well.
Okay, so, and again, the goal there is to handle complaints of discrimination in not just employment, but housing, and what was the other? Housing.
And public accommodations.
And what would, like hotels?
Hotels, restaurants.
That type of thing. So on average, in a week, how many complaints does the commission get? I mean, I know, I'm on average.
Depending on what's going on, and what let me give you the number for last year.
Okay.
From July 1 to June 30 of 2018, we got about 7,000 calls.
Okay.
We get peaks and valleys by the week. When the Me.2 movement first hit, we got a lot of calls. Last year, when the EEOC and federal agencies were closed down, we got more calls and more walk-ins than we have ever seen in a while.
Sure, that makes sense.
Because they couldn't get to those.
How are you able to actually vet 7,000? I mean, as you said, it's complicated sometimes.
7,000 calls. They'll call our 800 number, which I'll give you before we get up. They'll call our 800 number. Someone will answer, and we have about 7 or 8 questions. When did it occur? Because that's jurisdictional.
And statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations, and how many employees, and what happened to you. And then there might be some more. Well, tell us a little bit more about that. Are you the only, do you have witnesses, those kind of things. Then we'll send them a complaint form to their address, or we just started in January. You can file complaints online with us now, and we'll pull them offline and do the same thing. Once it comes in, our intake unit will look at it and determine whether or not it meets jurisdiction. Does it have 8 employees? And we do go online to determine whether or not it has 8 employees or more, because EEOC does EEO1s for every company in America, so we can usually tell whether it's 8 or more. And we'll go to the business registrations and things like that. Every once in a while, we'll find out it had 6 employees, not 8, so we don't have jurisdiction.
Okay.
But we'll tell them that you still have rights under the Tennessee Human Rights Act, but you have to get a lawyer and go into court.
I'll tell you, there have been cases. Obviously, the news media picks up on some of them. I can remember cases, and I don't always remember how they resolved, but a case of an employee complaining because he had found a noose hanging in his locker, or a Jewish employee finding a swastika spray painted on one of his possessions at the workplace, something along those lines. And as long as it can be proven that that wasn't something that person staged himself for whatever reason, which obviously is very rare, but that to me, if you prove it, it's pretty open and shut, isn't it?
Yeah. It is if we can prove, that the employer knew or should have known.
And didn't do anything about it.
And didn't do anything about it.
That's the key. Yeah.
And then, because the employer is the liable, even if we don't find the person, the employer is liable for that. What did they do when they found it and those kind of things? And by the way, nooses in the workplace have been on the rise for the last 2 years.
For real?
For real. And
what
any kind of symbols, anti-symbols of any sort, whether it's swastikas or any of those kind, have been on the rise. It's probably attuned to society's, I guess some people call it, political correctness has gone out the window, so people think they can do and say things and do things. And if employers don't deal with it, the employers are liable under civil rights laws in this country with respect to these issues.
Just real quick, and we'll take a call here, but when you say liability, so if these employers in some of these cases are found to have violated the law and some of this, one, I guess that individual could hire a private attorney and sue them for civil damages in federal court. What type of hammer do you bring down on them?
What we do is we'll do an investigation. If we find that there is reason to believe that discrimination occurred, we will then refer the complaint to an administrative law judge in the state of Tennessee, who will do it under what is called an administrative process. We follow civil procedure as you would in court, but this is not in the court of law. It is in the administrative court of law.
Okay, and when they look at this, what can they issue fines?
They can issue a finding, and then our board of commissioners, we have 9, will make a decision about whether they agree with the administrative law judge or not. We recently had a housing case in which the administrative law judge found there was no discrimination, and our board of commissioners agreed with the administrative law judge that there was no. This was after a hearing. People are under oath. Our attorneys go in and they prosecute. They actually prosecute the case on behalf of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, not the complaining party, but the complaining party is a party to it. They may or may not have an attorney, and so that case the owner of the property actually won that. So
now, if they lose, what happens to the owner? What can happen?
If they lose, they possibly can be fined, because we have another decision coming up where our Board of Commissioners will look at an employment case where the administrative law judges recommended that the complaining party receive $25,000.
Okay, so there can be some teeth, because if they're found guilty and nothing happens, then what do they care? They'll just keep doing it.
Right.
But on the other hand, too, does it help if I'm an individual who's hired my own private attorney, I've also filed a complaint with you, and then it goes through and it's proven by you guys that it did happen? Does that help my civil case, you think?
Well, you can't do both at the same time. You have to withdraw from one and take the other. Depending on the information, a lot of attorneys will look at that and they'll get our records. They can only get so much of it, and they will say, yeah, we want to take this into federal court.
But that'll be after you're done.
No, we don't. We will not finish it. We'll stop we'll stop where we are.
And then they'll pick up with where you've been.
They'll pick up and they'll take it into court.
Yeah, because they're suing for dollars in federal court, and that's what. Okay,
and that's if it's dual filed under both the Tennessee Human Rights Act and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act.
And is there, by the way, and we'll get to the call here in a moment, but is there any relief for the employee? I mean, if you find it through your department, you can fine the business, but what? Does that fine money go to the employee?
It goes to the complaining party.
Oh, it does? Okay.
It goes to the complaining party.
Right. Yes.
And what we do also is when we do that first intake and we send the letter to the complaining party saying we've accepted and filed your complaint, here's your complaint number, and we send it to the business, we always put another paragraph in. We offer mediation, which is voluntary. So if you would like to volunteer to enter into mediation with the complaining party company or complaining party with this company, let us know. And we do mediations. Last year, I think we did 21 mediations where people voluntarily agreed to mediate that. Before we do any investigations, we did about $175,000 through last June, and that's the latest figures we have that show. So they settled.
Yeah, and settling out of court.
They settle out of court. They settle out of the administrative process. We have an agreement with them, and we monitor that to make sure that they follow through.
That's a good other option. Yeah. Save court time. Let's go to Paul. Paul, good morning. Hi, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Nick. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Good to hear from you, sir.
Good morning to your guest there.
Good morning.
First off, I'll say this. Absolutely love what this young lady is speaking today and what she represents. She represents, Nick, being fair and consistent to everybody. That's what she represents.
Absolutely.
Fair and consistent to everybody. And look, Nick, you know how I feel about certain things because I've called in and voiced my opinion. Discrimination, racism in the workforce and housing has always been a problem, okay? It has. Now, I think it's gotten better through the decades, but it started with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Other things have helped it. FMLA has helped this, okay? Acts like that have helped it. But, Nick, you said something that I didn't quite agree with you. Nick, usually I agree with you a lot. You said that if somebody gets where they just can't do the job anymore, it's okay to fire them. Well, Nick, you know, Tennessee is a right to work state, but it is also a right to fire state. That's another way to look at it. Nick, the older you get, my friend, look, I'm 50 years old. I certainly can't do what I did when I was 18. I can't. And the bottom line in these employers when it comes to age discrimination is productivity, and that's it. And the bottom line, of course, is money. So you have to put places in here to protect people like that. Now there is a gray area, and this is the gray area. Coming up, look, I'm a union man. I'm a union man. I'm always for workers' rights. I always have been. Now, the LGBT transgender people coming in, love them to death. God love them. I want them to be what they want to be. But the gray area that we're having now, ma'am, is this, and I'm gonna put this question to her. We had a individual that was going through a transgender, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, this individual, one day, this individual wanted to be this gender. The next day, this individual wanted to be another gender, a different gender. Every day, this individual wanted to be a different gender, and that caused problems in the workplace. And how do we deal with that particular individual that is confused daily to daily what gender they want to be? Because I want to treat them fairly, but that's what we got to get to with that faction is how can we treat these people fairly?
Okay, and I don't know, we kind of talked about how the law doesn't really address that, but what he may be referring to, I'm just thinking of a scenario. If there's someone there who has a gender issue where they're, wanting to say and maybe file a complaint and say, look, I work at this place of employment. My identity now is this, and I want to be able to use that restroom. And it's a different restroom than maybe the one they used before they changed their identity. And could they file a complaint and all of that? And maybe it creates some concern among others in the workplace. I don't know. That's not anything you deal with. It's coming, though.
It's not what we deal with. However, because we have an agreement with the EEOC, we would do an intake and we would send it to the EEOC, because under Title VII, gender is covered under gender sex discrimination, and it's called gender conforming issues as to what should you look like if you are this, or if you are male or female or transgender. Plus, there is a court case that. And I'm not. There's a court case going up to the Supreme Court with respect to this very issue, where an individual worked for a funeral home and had worked for that funeral home for 15 plus years and decided one day that they were going to be transgender and started the transition. And started wearing female clothes. And the funeral home fired them. They filed a suit with the EEOC. They filed a complaint with the EEOC, and the EEOC won. The employer has since appealed it, and now it's going to go. So they're going to. The High Court is probably going to look at this and further confirm what that is. And there's been a number of these cases in different federal district courts jurisdictions around the country, and I can't remember which circuit this one is. It might have been. Could have been this circuit, but I can't remember. But it's going up to the Supreme Court, and they're going to look at that, and that probably addresses the issue. I always tell people that at some point it does cause confusion, but set some rules, put them in place, and move on. And this is one of the things that's going on, because a lot of people are very uncomfortable. The state of Tennessee just passed a law which talks about this issue, and the law might be subject to appeal, I'm not sure, which says that you cannot be indecent exposure in workplaces, and it goes towards, some people say, the transgender issue.
What would be the indecent exposure?
Being in a bathroom that doesn't conform to your gender. Okay. So that, and that's one of the issues that came up, and it goes into effect on July 1. It was the one law, I think, that passed in the last session that people were opposed to, that the LGBT community was opposed to. So
interesting. All right, we'll take a break on that note. Wow. All right. Yeah. A lot of this stuff evolving, especially on that front. If you're on hold, stay there. 737-7587. This is Beverly Watts, Tennessee Human Rights Commission Executive Director. And boy, she has a lot of things she's dealing with in her office. We'll take a break and be back with more right after this.